أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على أشرف المرسلين سيدنا ونبينا وحبيبنا ومولانا محمد صلى الله عليه وسلم قال الله تعالى في شان حبيب إن الله وملائكته يصلون على النبي يا أيها الذين آمنوا صلوا عليه وسلموا تسليما اللهم صل على سيدنا محمد وعلى آل سيدنا محمد وأصحابه وبارك وسلم. Amma ba'd, in the name of Almighty Allah, most gracious, most merciful. Salutations upon the most honored, the most favored, and the most perfect of Almighty Allah's creation, your and my Nabi Muhammad Mustafa sallallahu alaihi wasallam, his family, his companions and their families, after which our respected imams, members of the ulama, members of the Jamaat, the ladies upstairs, the men, members of the youth, and all those following on the various media platforms, I greet you, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi ta'ala wa barakatuh. For those who are following and who may not understand the greeting, it means, may the peace and blessings of the Almighty, our Creator, descend upon each and every one, inshallah. First and foremost, I thank Allah Rabbul Izzat for giving me the opportunity once again to be within the institution of the Jumuah, and secondly, to be able to stand in front of an august Jamaat like yourself. Secondly, I'd like to thank the Imams once again for the invitation to be able to deliver this talk. Before I proceed, Jamaat, I would like to request that you join me in sending a special dua for all those in your family and mine who have passed on, but particularly 3 people who were closely connected with this masjid. The first was the late Dr. Abdul Wahab Bardey, the first chairperson of this masjid, a trustee, and indeed a visionary. Secondly, the late Mr. Abu Bakr Shlosh, a member of the Bilal team at this masjid, member of the committee, and for many years a secretary of this masjid, a man who was involved in so many activities in this community that Almighty Allah rewarded him in the most beautiful of reward, to die in the city of Medina and to be buried in Jannat al-Baqi. And finally, Sister Fatima Flotman, a lady that went through a tremendous amount of challenges health-wise, but every day she had a beautiful smile on her face. I ask you to join me in making dua that Almighty Allah must grant each and every one of them a very high place in the Jannah, inshallah. Jamaat, allow me to give you a heads up. In presenting this talk, the major events of 2019, I have a good story to tell, but on the other side, I also have a not so good story to tell. But for me, the major lesson, like last year, has been how quick time has gone by. It's almost as if just a couple of weeks ago, I was here doing a similar talk last year. And the lesson for me is that it is remarkable that the second shortest surah in the Holy Quran, Surah Al-Asr, the second shortest surah in the Holy Quran, deals with that instrument by which you can measure the journey of a human being's life. And that instrument is time. And the remarkable fact is that the second shortest surah in the Holy Quran deals with the longest journey of the life of a human being. And it is no wonder that Imam Shafi, may Allah be eternally pleased with him, said, were there not to have been a Quran revealed, were there not to have been a Quran revealed, Surah Asr would have sufficed for us. And I make dua today that if we cannot memorize the entire Quran, let us start by memorizing Surah Al-Asr, inshallah. Let us be hafiz at least of Surah Al-Asr and live the values of Surah Al-Asr. I start my talk in the month of January, where in the city of Louisville in America, the Louisville International Airport gets renamed the Muhammad Ali International Airport, named after the iconic boxer. A man, for those of you who know the history, suffered a tremendous amount purely because he became a Muslim and he was not prepared to lower himself against the authorities at the time. A man who was oppressed, a man who was ridiculed, but a man who stood for his principles. And towards the end of his life, when the authorities, like sometimes they do, they're very two-faced people. At one stage, they would condemn you, and the next stage, they want to give you all sorts of platitudes. So when they wanted to give him an award by putting his name in the Hall of Fame in America on the ground, he said, I am named after the greatest human being that ever lived. It will be the greatest insult if anybody must walk and tramp on that name, Muhammad. This is the man that Almighty Allah has honored today. Every year, 4 million people enter that airport and honor the great legacy of the late Muhammad Ali. Pope Francis meets up with Sheikh Ahmad Al-Tayyib, head of the Al-Azhar, which is the highest center of knowledge for Sunni Muslims. And what do they agree upon? They sign an accord. Yes, you've heard me right. They sign an accord known as the Accord of Fraternity, whereby they jointly agree to fight any form of extremism, and they jointly agree to promote interfaith harmony and bring about good relations within people of different religions. Sounds very familiar, I must say. Then I have a wonderful story from the Netherlands, where there is a man whose name was Joram van Klaveren. This man was an anti-Muslim hater and an anti-Muslim preacher like you would never ever get. He hated Islam, and later on, when he went on this tirade against our beautiful deen, he started writing a book, Why You Should Hate Islam. Please listen to me carefully. He started writing a book, Why You Should Hate Islam. Allah is great. Halfway through, he stops writing that book. He goes to the nearest Islamic center. He meets up with one of the scholars, and he says, after I've gone through all this, and after having studied your deen, wanting to hate your deen, today I want to become a Muslim. And today, this man has written a book on what the beautiful deen of Islam is. Iran, a very, very troubled country at this very, very point in time. I hope I am wrong, and I make dua that Allah Ta'ala must prove me wrong. But the war is coming. And there were very ominous signs as early as this morning. But the country celebrated 40 years as an Islamic Republic in 2019. The country has many problems and many challenges. But for those of us who have visited the country, we really admire the resilience of the people of Iran. Back home, Jamaat, in this very masjid, we were honored to have hosted the Islamic relics of our Nabi Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And all of us, the imams and the committee, were mighty proud of this ummah of Muslims here in the Cape. 40,000 people over 3 days visited in the most dignified manner to come and honor, witness, and pay respects to those lyrics. May Almighty Allah continue keeping us this wonderful community that we are. For the young people, the sports-minded people, we all know that there is a very, very good rugby player by the name of Sonny Bill Williams who became a Muslim. We all know that. What many people do not know is that because of his character and personality as a Muslim, his brother John became a Muslim. And that is not all, Jamaat. It was in March, April 2019, when his beloved mother saw her 2 beautiful sons, how the transformation came by becoming Muslims, taking the Shahada, Sanibal and John. And it was in March and April where she went to Sanibal and said, son, I also want to become a Muslim. And she's today a Muslim, mashallah. Then I want to speak about the month of Ramadan that we had in this masjid. And I want to be absolutely clear that when I say what I'm going to say now, these are my views. If anybody subscribes to my views, I would be happy. But if you don't, we can live with our differences. We hosted the American scholar, Norman Ali Khan, a formidable scholar. That point I would like to make and place on record. But at the same time, a man who carries a huge amount of controversy. But for me personally, and this is a very personal point I'm making, it taught me the scourge of gender-based violence that is prevalent in our community. It also taught me that it is crazy men who are the problems. And it also taught me that it is perverted men who have power that feel they can do what they want to that is the main problem. It was when they killed that lady, that student at the University of Cape Town, Yuwi Nene Mirwatani, and the masjid during the course of the Jumuah delivered a clip, a 7-minute clip, which went viral all over the world, from Sudan to Australia to Indonesia to Malaysia. It went viral, more than 50,000 people viewed it. But it also highlighted to us the wonderful role, on a positive note, that women folk are doing in this world today. And I must bring it to the attention particularly of the men in this Jamaat. Let me start by mentioning to you a lady by the name of Salaah from Sudan, known as the Lady of the White Robe. She was the lady, one woman, who mobilized the entire nation and eventually, after 30 years of brutal oppression, brought down the tyranny of Omar al-Bashir in Sudan. One lady. Here home, very proudly as Cape Townians, with respect to the visitors who are here, we have Rizka Hasim, a student at Redham House. Cambridge University judged her the topmost math student in the entire world. On a sad note, a Palestinian lady, age 16, becomes Hafiz of the Holy Quran, goes on Umrah, comes back from Makkah Sharif. As she comes back to Palestine, like we all do that have been there, you encounter what is called roadblocks. A crazy Israeli soldier wanted to forcefully take off her niqab. On principle, she refused. This maniac shot her in cold blood, dead on the spot there. What an ultimate price a woman pays for the values that she believes in. But then in Cape Town, again, our visitors with respect. In Cape Town, we have Sister Fatima Isaacs that took on the might of the South African National Defence Force, the mightiest army in the whole of Africa, for her right to wear a headscarf. Mrs. Sadaf Jaffer, the first Muslim female mayor in the United States of America. First Muslim female mayor. Thousands of ladies in Iran demand and were granted the right to watch soccer matches. The United Nations declares Malala Yousafzai the most influential teenager of the decade. And then came the massacre in New Zealand. The world was watching in horror. During Friday prayers at the masjid known as Masjidul Noor in Christchurch, while the Jumu'ah namaz was on, a maniac walks into the masjid, live streams to the entire world, and brutally kills 51 people. We all know that. But it was a woman, the Prime Minister of New Zealand, Jacinda Ardern, that taught the entire world a lesson in leading a nation in comfort, compassion, and solace. Indeed, a woman that the nation can be proud of. This is what women are doing in the world for the cause of Islam. The question is, what are we? Here in Cape Town, historian, the late Mr. Ahmad Davids, may Allah grant him Jannah, was awarded a presidential award by the authorities in Pretoria. 17 sites in the Boekap were granted provincial heritage sites on a happy note. And on a sad note, we all followed what happened when the graves were desecrated at the Mowbray Qabristan. Then, Jamaat, I have to speak about the state of our nation. The corruption, the incompetence. After 25 years, when are things gonna really come right? Eskom, South African Airways, Trains, SABC, the post office. Gang violence in the townships. Our poor people have to live with us day in and day out. What did the army do? It appears as if it had absolutely no impact. Remember, poverty is the greatest form of terrorism. Our economy is in shambles. We are not even doing 1% GDP in our country. Yet, it's never happened before. More and more of our poor people are sleeping on the streets and under bus shelters. And then once again, on a very disturbing note, another very well-known and a very good businessman, Mr. Muhammad Karim, has been kidnapped again. He's still not released. And I ask you please to join me in making special dua that Almighty Allah must release him, a very good man, and also protect all of us, inshallah. Jamaat, that was a broad overview of some of the events that took place in the year 2019. I now want to focus on 6 major issues. Before I start, let me remind you that we are 1.8 billion Muslims in this world. Billion, that's with a B. We constitute 25% of the total population of the world, and on the basis of statistics, if you're out anywhere, and if you start counting 1, 2, 3, and 4, 1 out of those 4 people more than likely would be a Muslim. We have all the numbers, we have all the resources, we have everything, including intelligence, and I'd like to believe that the Muslims are among the most intelligent people in the world. How helpless we have become. I will tell you why towards the end of my talk, but let's just go through these 6 issues very quickly. Yemen, once again, the United Nations declares it to be the largest catastrophe in the world at the moment. The Saudi-led invasion has brought about 14 million people who are in starvation, 7,000 murdered, 11,000 injured. Let us not forget Burma. 730,000 people have fled to Bangladesh. Thousands killed, raped, and tortured. The United Nations again describes it as the gravest crimes against humanity in modern day times. Yet, their leader, so-called leader, Aung San Suu Kyi, has the audacity to still call herself a Nobel Peace Laureate. None of the major countries in the world could do anything about it, whether it's the Muslim countries or the non-Muslim countries. It was a small African nation by the name of Gambia that took this so-called Nobel Peace Laureate to the International Court of Justice. Let's go to China. 1 million people in orientation camps. Reports, and some of them are very credible, that Muslims are forced to eat pork, forced to drink wine, and they are not allowed to read the Quran in the month of Ramadan. More reports coming from China that they want to rewrite the sacred text. They want to rewrite versions of the Quran, and some reports say versions of the Bible, so that it conforms to socialism. What an audacity. Muslim leaders are very quiet all over the world. Very few Muslim leaders are talking about it. And it is obvious that trade has value. Business and money has value. Principles and human life have no value. Palestine, we know the US Embassy has gone to Jerusalem. The Golan Heights this year was annexed and is now called the Trump Heights. The next will be the Jordan Valley, mark my words. The Americans have the audacity to claim that the settlements are not a violation of international law. I have a question. After 70 years, why is it still that today Hamas and Fatah cannot sit around one table and sort out the differences? It's part of the problem. And then we go to India, a very troubled nation at the moment. Kashmir, for those who may not be aware, is the only Muslim majority state in the whole of India. 1.2 billion people. Kashmir is the only Muslim majority state. The government revoked its self-autonomy status during the course of 2018. Then we had the Babri Masjid. For those who may not be aware, it's a 500-year-old masjid. And on the day of Maulud al-Nabi, the Supreme Court of India ruled that the Babri Masjid will now become a temple. But on a happier note, because I always like to believe in the positive side of things, and that's what I've learned from Sheikh Abdul Rahman. On a happier note, 28 years ago, one of the maniacs that were responsible for the demolition of that masjid, they broke it down completely, they chopped it down completely. This man embraces Islam, takes on the name of Muhammad Amir, and has set a mission for the rest of his life to build masajids all over India. The Citizens Amendment Act is an act, for those who may not be aware, passed by Parliament in India, where they will accept refugees from Bangladesh, Pakistan, and Afghanistan, from any religious minority, be it Buddhist, Sikh, Hindu, any minority, with the exception of Muslims. They will not accept a Muslim. Very ominous reports coming from India. Reports coming of the erection of detention camps. A nation in uproar. 25 people have died, thousands are in jail, and condemned by many people throughout the world. Again, Jamaat, we need to reflect. The third largest Muslim population in the world is in India. Indonesia, Pakistan, and thereafter, India. 200 million people. And they can do just what they want to our people. And let's be very clear about this. This is not a religious issue. It's a human rights issue. I would stand here and my imams would back me 100%. If they had to do this to anyone from any other religious group, we would have taken the very, very same position. At home, Imam Abdullah Harun, may Almighty Allah grant him a very high daraja, inshallah. His wife passed away also in the year 2019. 50 years later, a man who was passionate about taking the message of Islam, particularly to our brothers in the townships. A man who believed in outreach, compassion, honor, and giving dignity, particularly to poor people. The question we have today is, how far have we practiced the message of Imam Abdullah Harun? If we did, would there have been a need for a black Muslim conference in our country in April last year? In conclusion, Jamaat, I mentioned earlier, we are 1.8 billion Muslims in this world. It seems as if we are hopeless. And I said I will give you the answer towards the end. The answer is threefold. The first part of that answer, and I want you to listen to this very carefully, it's very short. The great scholar that graces this masjid so many times, and we have all learned so much from him, Sheikh Muhammad bin Yahya al-Ninawi, has said, let us encourage the clash of the minds, but never the clash of the hearts. I'll repeat, because these are profound words. Let us encourage the clash of the minds, but never the clash of the hearts. Secondly, he, sallallahu alayhi wasallam, Nabi, Rasul, Allah's most beloved, the greatest man, the greatest human being that ever walked on this earth. And I subscribe to that 100%. Sallallahu alayhi wasallam. But we tend to forget many times when we talk about our beloved Nabi Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wasallam, that essentially he came as a reformer. He came to reform society. At the time that he came, the society was referred to as Jahiliyyah. He took them from darkness into light. And I think that reformation is needed today more than ever before in this world. Finally, the Holy Quran. The Quran, as we know, it's an obvious statement I'm making, is the word of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. In Urdu we say, Kalam-e-Pak. It's the word of Allah. But I want you to listen to something that has been written by somebody, and you'll be shocked to hear who it was written by, which is called the cry or the lament of the Quran. In other words, this is now, just hypothetically speaking, please understand me, this is now not Allah speaking, but this is the Quran itself speaking. And it's in Urdu. It's only 6 lines, and I will translate for you. This person says, Amal ki kitab thi, dua ki kitab bana diya. He says, I am a book ordained with a divine command for action. You've turned me merely into a ritual book of prayer. Secondly, he says, Samajhne ki kitab thi, parne ki kitab bana diya. I am a divine book meant to be comprehended. Sadly, I've been turned into a book without understanding. And finally, he says, Zindao ka dastur tha, murdao ka manshur bana diya. I was meant as the divine code for the living. You've turned me into a manifesto for the dead. These 6 lines were not written by Ghazali or Rumi or by Allama Iqbal. They were written 35 years ago by a Hindu by the name of Shankar Dayal Sharma. Jamaat, as I end, the lesson of the talk is a very simple one. Let us study and let us try, first of all, to cleanse our hearts. This is the lesson that Sheikh Nanawi mentions at every talk of his. Secondly, let us try to study the life of the Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam. If you feel that some of the traditional scholars, the works are a little bit heavy to read, go to 2 books written by somebody that's not a Muslim by the name of Karen Armstrong. She wrote 2 biographies on the Holy Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Brilliant stuff to read. And finally, never take the Quran for granted, for ultimately that is a book of life. I thank you. Shukran. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.